Welcome everyone to part 5 of our sampler project. I wanted to go over the foot itself. This is the edge joiner foot. This is got some interesting abilities. You have your slats that you can place your fabric in, and it also has a adjuster that moves where the lining up of the needle to these slats is aligned when your needle comes through. So this does actually have a way to move. Now there is a small tab on the side of the foot, and that is something that you can use to slide the foot back and forth. See how it moves? So the little hole right here can be moved, and it's going to be really hard to move. That's normal because it's not supposed to slide around when it's in the machine itself, but you would want to decide where you would like your needle to fall in line with the different slats that are lined up. And this, if you can't move this the way that I just did, you can go ahead and turn it over and get your oil. You would want to put a drop of oil like right around here, or on this side. You might need to do it on both sides depending on how stuck it is, or you can even try to drop right in this area here so that it will go in between the top and the lower area of that where that piece is sliding. And if you do that, then the next thing you're going to want to do is wipe any excess oil off of there, because you don't want any excess oil getting on your project fabric that you're working on and to sew. Okay, so with this piece, with this foot, you have 5 slats. You have 1, this is slat number 2, this is slat number 3, this is slat number 4, and then this one is slat number 5. So that is how it is described in the book that does talk about this foot. And you're going to be attaching this to your machine and using your fabric or whatever it is. I'm going to be using fabric and lace to be able to sew pieces together to make a really pretty effect. So we'll look at that. The plan of attack for this block is that we're going to be attaching various pieces together on their edges to make the finished block. And we have the main color in the background is going to be your light color. Now you can choose a little piece of the complementary, either the dark or the patterned fabric. And then you also want to pick out your lace or your sheer fabric, whatever it is that you have, in order to set in between the pieces where they're going to be joined. So on the back of these pieces, I'll just flip this over so you can take a look. Now I have just finger pressed the edge over so that this is not going to be raw, where it is that I'll be sewing the lace onto. So this lace is going to be basically lined up right along the edge of the fabric's fold, and we're going to sew very slowly right along this edge all the way down the whole side. And then we're going to do the same thing. So now I've folded this side over, and we're going to be doing the same thing on this one, so that basically when we're done, we're going to have a very pretty joining of this very delicate lace to the sturdy fabric, and that technique is called entre-deux. I don't know if you've ever seen Martha Pullen. She had a series years ago that where she would go to these beautiful antique shops and pick out items that were sewn together in this method with the entre-deux style, and things that she would have on her show were really beautiful. This is something that I found. It's a shirt, obviously, but it has been sewn together with the same sort of idea. So we have these lace pieces, which are really wide, sewn to another lace piece, sewn to another lace piece, sewn to another lace piece, and you can't see where those pieces come together. They're just entre-deux together to make a really pretty lace blouse. So that is what we're going to be working on in a very simple method. with our block, we're going to be making our block wide enough by adding small pieces together with the lace in between the pieces to give a really pretty effect. And we'll go ahead and get our machine set up so that we can start. So I have my unit hooked onto my machine. It's nice and firm. I did place my needle hole in the center of the lineup area where it can slide, so it's not over to the right or to the left. It's pretty much in the center. And you're going to need to decide, like I was just showing, if you want to have the piece that's on the right on top of the piece on the left, or if you want to have it underneath. So that's the decision that you have to make, and depending on what you decide, you're going to install your pieces into the unit differently. So whichever one is going on top is the one that will be the closest to the needle. So if you want your fabric to be over your lace, then the fabric goes in on the left side in slot number 1, and you just push it all the way over. And then the fabric that would be, or the lace rather, that would be going underneath it needs to go in slot number 4 on the right. So this is going to go underneath. That way when you're sewing, you're actually going to have the fabric that is on top. So you would set that down. The fabric that's on top is the thing that is going to be showing on top of your finished work. Now if you want to do it the other way, if you want your lace to be on top, then your lace needs to be the one that's closest to the needle. So the lace would go in slot number 4, but your fabric would go in slot number 2. So your fabric is now going to be the thing that is underneath the piece that's closest to the needle. Now I find that this is a little fiddly trying to get this to work out, but if you kind of bring everything in past the needle, and you can kind of reach it on the front and the back, then you can bring the other one in the same way where it reaches to into the, where you can hold it from the front and the back. Then you can kind of see that the fabric and the lace are both underneath the needle. You can go ahead and carefully, you can even pin it if that helps. Sometimes that is very helpful when you can pin something so it doesn't slide around on you. So there we go, pin that side. And then you want to kind of carefully kind of pull it back a little bit so that you have your, this is where another pin comes in handy, where you can actually just make sure that everything is underneath that needle hole, and then pull that down. And now you have everything in their slots, and you're going to want to go ahead and start sewing. This is going to be, I encourage to do hand turning first with your wheel. You can even go backwards with this, because this is just doing straight stitching. There's nothing that is overly complicated with this unit. You're just straight stitching everything. You just need to go really slow. So you're going to decide how long you want your stitch length to be, and mine's at about 10 to 12. And then you're just going to very slowly you just want to keep everything in line with coming into their slots all the way over, and you're just going to slowly start to sew. And you can tell that everything is in place because you can see this fabric, this lace, the orange color is still in that needle hole spot. You can tell that it's there. And just very slowly go ahead. And you can see where it's joined in the back. Ventre dos. You just want to go ahead and keep on sewing until you get to the end. So I like to kind of just make sure that even if they're like crisscrossed a little bit, when it gets to this point, it's not going to be crisscrossed anymore that much, because it's The stoppers will be holding everything in place. Just slowly, if you're feeling like you're missing something, you can just stop, not panic. Things can always be fixed. If you're having trouble sewing slowly, something that you can try to do is, I know our machine power foot is a little different than other modern machines, but what you would want to do is just take your shoe off. This is what works for me. I use my big toe to press on the button on the machine foot to get it to start and stop. I just use my big toe and press down on the button, and then I just raise it up when I feel like I'm done with that point where I need to stop. Okay, we're almost there, we're almost at the end. And that seems to help with my control. You're not using your whole foot like driving a car. You're just using your toe to manage the speed of your sewing. Okay, so here we are, we're at the end. And now we have this beautifully sewn edge that's perfect. On the back, we have it all stitched down, very nice. So what do? We bring the needle up with our hand, turning the wheel, and then bring it where it's starting to go down. That's when you can raise the presser foot to be able to pull your thread. If you do it too soon, then your thread won't pull. So that's when you know that you have to move your wheel a little bit more. But there it is. You have this beautifully sewn, perfectly sewn edge, and you cannot see that yellow, it's almost totally invisible along that edge. Both pieces are sewn on together perfectly. And you're just going to do that across your entire piece of work. So now here we go again. We're going to take our next panel, which is going to go on this edge, and we're going to do the same thing. So we're going to go ahead and get our threads in the back. We're going to decide which one's going to go on top, and that's the one that goes closest to the needle. Right, closest to the needle. The next one that is to go under it goes the next slot closest to you. And we're going to just get them lined up in the back. Put our presser foot down. We can reverse. Hold on to those threads that are in the back. Yeah, we can do a little reverse. Get back down to our stitching. Just get those two pieces and kind of crisscross them a little bit in front of each other. So when you start sewing, the machine will be doing all of that lining up for you. You don't have to do any of the lining up yourself. And you're just going to slowly go to the end of this next one. When you get more comfortable, you can go a little faster. I know this might seem a little scary to do this the first few times, but once you get the hang of it, you'll realize that this foot really does all the work for you. All you got to do is let it. And we're just trying things out. Okay, so I ran out of bobbin. Now, what do? Well, you don't panic because everything can be fixed. So we want to get our bobbin refilled and then get our pieces back into their slots like they're supposed to be. This is actually going to be a little bit easier to get lined up because we already had it lined up and it's all being held together for us already for where we sewed it last. So I have it in slot number 2. It's on the left side, the main color. Slot number 4 is where my lace is going, just like before. I'm going to put down my presser foot, and my threads are underneath here, so I'm just going to kind of press down on that area, do a couple stitches forward, take a stitch or two back, and I'm using the hand wheel this time for this part. and then back down to move that forward to get started again. So I'm just going to hold my pieces and start over. Now there will be a little bit of a thicker thread area in that spot, but you know what? This is a sampler. This is what we're using in order to, or this is what we're making in order to learn how to use our equipment. So it's okay. And there we go. We're at the end of the piece again already. So I'm going to bring it forward to there with my hand wheel. Then I'm able to have the thread release. Okay. All right. So this is what we have. We have two very beautifully sewn together pieces of fabric with lace in between. There's where my little blip was. Now, if you're using fabric with thread that is a matching color, you might not even notice that. So if I was actually using an orange thread, then this would blend in better. Okay, so this is what I'm going to need to do for my next piece of ribbon that I'm going to be putting on this side. I'm just going to go ahead and do my finger pressing along the edge here so that that's not raw. Remember what I said, if you wanted to get that to be pretty even, you can just kind of tug in the front and the back where you're folding, and that's going to kind of give you a really good idea where that line, that natural green line, is falling, and you can just use that to finger press that down. And that's where I'm going to sew. If you want to measure it, feel free. You certainly can do that. If you're feeling like it doesn't look even, mine looks like it might be a little bit off. But, you know, if that's if you feel more comfortable with it being pressed, then go ahead and press it. So we're going to go ahead and line that back up in our machine and do the next two panels, one on each side of the next piece of ribbon, and then we'll be done with this block. We will be able to cut it to size 12.5 by 12.5, and our project for this week will be done. So playing around with getting this to go into the unit a little bit easier, here's what I have discovered, just because of, you know, trial and error. Go ahead and just take a little tiny bite of the fabric with your pin at the beginning point, and that will hold that together when you're trying to get it under the attachment. And then you can go ahead and maneuver the lace into slot 4, and see the pin is holding everything in place in the back. And then you're going to be able to then maneuver the other piece of fabric into slot number 2. And that will, the pin is holding everything. So you just kind of pinch it all together. I know it's hard to see with my fingers in the way, sorry about that. But you can pinch it together, make sure that it's flat, and just sort of slide it back to the pin. Grab the threads so that they're not going to bunch up under there. Then you can put down the foot, pull your pin out, and that holds it in place really nicely. So then you go ahead and hold those threads, take your first couple of stitches by hand, then you can back up just to lock it. One stitch is enough for that. Then you can get it back in place, ready to go ahead and start sewing. So let's go. Here we go. This is what I came up with my black. I think I really love it. I think it looks great. If you want to look at this closer, I just love the way that the stitches came out. So great. There was one little spot right here where it looks like it almost didn't catch. But if I really wanted to, I could just go ahead and just hand sew some stitches on there. This is the spot where it missed altogether, and I had to fix that by resewing that one spot. And this is just, I just love it. Actually, this is a spot where my bobbin ran out. So yeah, as you can see, things don't always go perfect, but you just make do, you adapt. If you really wanted it to be perfect, you'd have to pull things out and re-sew them, start from the beginning. But here is my square, and I think it looks so great. I hope that you are inspired to try making this block with your edge joiner. I do want you to hang on to the edge joiner foot for next week. We are going to be using it again for a different technique. So if you do make this, please share it with our group so that we can all be inspired by what you're making. Thanks for joining us with our sampler project. Have a great one. See you next time.